Welcome to the Afterthoughts podcast. 1 hour and 30 minutes ago, I texted our guest today and asked her to join us, and she's here. AJ Norman, joining the Afterthoughts podcast.
The queen.
Hey guys.
AJ, welcome to the Afterthoughts podcast. It's one of my dreams in life is to make others' dreams come true. And today I feel like I'm getting to do that.
100%.
I know that on your bucket list, being on this podcast
Very top.
was very tough. Anything else on there?
No, that's it.
That's it.
I'm good
So
now.
this is it.
Wow.
This is it. Yeah.
Well,
This is my
it's cool to be a part of
ultimate
that.
peak
Yeah,
in
what's
life.
on your bucket list, E? Besides from hosting episode 47 of the Afterthoughts podcast.
Making it to episode 47,
Yeah.
always been a big one. Yep. I'd like to go to Scotland
Yeah.
and play golf there.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's probably a couple other things, but none coming to mind.
Yeah.
This isn't questions with Kayla yet, so we're
Right.
getting ahead of ourselves. AJ, tell us a little about yourself to our massive audience of people all over the world watching. Some people locally here in Austin already know you, but there's just countless people who don't yet, but now they do.
Now they do. Yeah, my name is AJ. It is short for Please don't call me that though.
Noted.
Take that out.
Yeah, cut that.
Just bleep it. It's short for beep.
Yeah, I go by AJ. I was raised in Austin, left right after high school, spent a couple years in Scottsdale, a couple years in Columbus, Ohio, moved back at the end of 2019, started at Red Rocks 2.5 years ago. I serve here every weekend as volunteer campus lead, which just means like hang out with the volunteers.
Run the church.
AJ runs the church.
Hardly.
The other day, I literally said, because Chris was gone, and then I was like, what did we do here before AJ? Like, how did this all happen? I don't know.
Unclear. No. And then I also get to love on the ladies at our Lane Murray unit.
Yes.
So that's awesome. And then for life outside of Red Rocks, I run a government consulting company, which focuses on typically we spend a lot of our time focusing on improving the lives of students and education reform. And we do that at the state level, so with governors and state agencies, and just trying to do the right things for kids and making sure that they can read, while also dabbling a little bit in other politics to make that happen.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about politics today.
Okay.
We're in a very interesting time in the world. So we'll talk about that. I have down here, who are you voting for, why,
Yeah.
and just give us your favorite and least favorite people in politics. So I look
Can't
forward to
wait
that
to talk
segment.
about that.
I'm sure you could say all that stuff. No, but I do want to talk about some of that.
Yeah.
Talk about faith and politics and how we can wade between those two things or bring those things together today. But before we get into heavier topics, Kayla's got something.
Questions with
She's always got something up her sleeve.
Oh, yeah. And today's a fun one. We're going to bring back an old game.
An old game.
Gen
Okay.
Z slang.
Gen Z
However,
slang.
I have some Gen Alpha in here, so it's even weirder, some of them.
How old are Gen Alpha
Yeah.
people?
I have no idea.
That
But
would
they're the
be-
youngins.
They're younger than Gen Z.
Yeah.
2015 born?
Whoa.
Is that what it would
Whoa.
be? No,
That's
that may be wrong.
gross.
Whoa.
Can you fact check for us, Haley?
Yeah.
Fact
yeah.
check.
And Gen Alpha, can they talk?
I think so.
Okay.
If they
I
have
think-
slang, right?
Is Gen Alpha like
Well,
10
Ray,
years
my
old?
son, who's 1.5, says a lot of slang, but it's not.
Okay,
it's not
2010 to 2024.
Born after
Oh my.
2010.
So,
Okay.
So they're
Yes,
14.
14 and
Oh my
younger.
God.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
So I'm the
That's
third-
wild.
Millennials.
That's
So speaking of an
gross.
old
kind of a
game.
middle
This is-
generation. They're
Let
old.
me explain why I know we're getting old. I remember the times where anytime someone was young, they were just a millennial. And then we all had a moment where we had to realize, oh, we can't just call young people millennials anymore because of Gen Z. We are now getting to a point where you can't just call a young person Gen Z because of Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
Hence, we're getting old.
It's time
Yeah.
to get back on Facebook.
MySpace.
Sure. Quick question before we play this game. Did you always go by AJ, or was there a moment in your life where you said, I'm AJ from here forward?
I was actually working for Chase Bank and had a really hard time getting in rooms with strong financial men. And like when a girl was reaching out to them, they were just like, Anna, no, I'll get back to her. The second that I changed my name to AJ in my signature, suddenly I got responses and respect over email before I even stepped foot into a room. Jeez. So I didn't start going by AJ full time.
It's messed up. As someone who banks at Chase, I have to say I'm embarrassed.
Yeah. I am reconsidering where I put my couple $1,000.
To be clear,
Jamie, can you get Jamie on here? I
Jamie
want to talk
Diamond
to him. I got a little
is
talk,
also
got a little
amazing.
conversation, Jamie. How are things running up there?
but would you like to know something
You
crazy?
know he watches.
Yeah,
He comments. He's
I'm
always
his
in the
biggest
comments.
fan. I'm his biggest fan.
Yeah.
Jamie
What's
Diamond.
his Jamie Diamond.
Jamie Diamond.
Yeah.
I'm
Of course
his
that's his
biggest
name.
fan. Yeah, of course, right?
Yeah, I was always at Jamie Diamond Afterthoughts fan. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
my Chase guys. Well, I'm like, well, hey,
Easy.
not so fast now, man.
Easy.
Yeah, so I did not start going by AJ full time
That was a
a couple years
strategic
ago.
move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now
Wow.
it's just weird to hear people say like Anna. Or
Speaking of politics, then the guy who got named for Trump's vice president, JD, is his initials. My brother JJ texted me last night. And he's like, "Big day for people with initial names."
did you? Yeah, big day.
Oh,
But did
yeah.
you know he just changed his name, or not just changed?
My
but
brother?
No. Yeah, he told me that
JJ?
actually.
He told you? Didn't tell me.
JD, his original name was like John Donald. That's not correct. Somebody fact check me on that.
Jonald.
Yeah, Jonald. Yeah, and now it's John David, I think. And these are
Wait,
probably
he cha-
completely. Yeah, he literally changed his name in life, and his last name wasn't Vance. It was because of his upbringing. He didn't identify with
His family?
his family,
Wow.
and so he changed his whole name.
Yeah.
So it's never too
Full
late
name
to change your
change.
name. James Donald Bowman was his original name, and now he's. What does the JD stand for?
James Donald Vance?
No, I think it's a completely different name.
Is it-
We're googling.
I mean, Ron Artest changed his name to Meta World Peace. So you can
Hey.
you can do that.
All throughout the Bible, people were changing their names all the time.
I tried
Jesus
to
is
change
a
my
name
name in
changer, I'll tell you.
college.
wait.
It didn't.
Wow.
It didn't stick.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It didn't stick.
You did what?
Kayla
did you-
tried
I
to
tried
change her
to
name in
change my
college.
name in college. Yeah.
To what?
Just Kayla Ray. Like I was like, I want to go by a double name, and it like
So
my
not
friends.
like
made
we're
fun
not
of
talking
me.
like legal.
No.
Okay.
I
No.
wish because your name
No.
is Kayla Ray.
It is middle
Okay.
name Ray, and
Yeah.
I was like, I want to have a double name, and it didn't stick.
And
My
people were
friends
like,
made fun
"It's
of me.
just
They're
Kayla."
like,
I get it.
they didn't even know me, and they're like, no, you're Kayla, and I was like, oh, okay.
But your middle name you're named after my son, Ray.
That is so
that's cool.
true. I am named after
It's a
Rayburn.
family.
All right, let's enough about initial names and all
Let's
this.
get into the serious stuff.
AJ
Yeah.
showed
Tell us
up here
about
to play
Gen
Gen Z,
Yeah.
Gen Alpha Slang.
Gen Alpha. Okay. So I'm going to do kind of like how I did last
Well,
time.
you need to explain it because AJ wasn't here
Oh.
last time.
Oh, right. Well, she's an avid listener
I am.
of the Afterthoughts
Wow.
podcast.
First time
Who is
visitor.
it? Her,
Yeah.
her and the rest of the Chase Bank family.
Yeah.
Jamie
All
Dimon, too.
Chase, AG1, all of that.
yeah.
So
AJ1.
I'm going to give you a few phrases or words. I can use it in a sentence, and you guys just kind of have to like tell me what you think it means.
Okay.
All right.
Got it.
So we'll kind of start off easy because I feel like it's really well known.
Let's do it.
Do it for the plot. Do you know what that means?
Live a great
For-
story. So like, let's go do this crazy thing because there may be a good story that comes out of
Yeah.
it. We feel
Let's
good
keep
about it?
things,
Yeah.
keep things interesting.
Yes.
People
People even say it. So
That's
like
better.
if you had something
Do it for
crazy,
the
like even
plot.
bad happen to you, some people like Gen Z now they make light of like terrible things. They're like, "Ugh, did it for the plot. Like
That's
I thought it was going to be
Actually
like,
great.
do it for the real estate in terms of like, do it for the money, do it for like your own acquisitions.
Grab
kind
the
of thing,
acreage.
but they're too-
get the plot of land.
Yeah, do it for the plot. Do it for the
No.
land, right? Secure the bag kind of stuff. I don't know.
I actually like
So wait,
that
what
one.
does it actually
Yeah.
mean?
It's like, also, I think it's an excuse if you like make a bad decision.
Yeah.
It's fine. I did it for the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
Because
it.
you
To
did
keep
it-
I did it to keep
Because
things
no
interesting.
movie, like a movie where nothing interesting happens, is
Exactly.
not a good movie.
So if I just bomb my
Exactly.
sermon this weekend, I'm just gonna
There you go.
did it for the
Did it
plot.
for the plot.
Yeah.
You can title it that. Colossians 3. Do it for the plot.
What if you did? That'd
Salt,
be great.
Chapter 4, salt seasoning. Okay.
Okay. Okay, another kind of easy one. Spill the tea.
Gossip.
Yes.
Tell me the news.
yes. Like drama.
I feel like that's
yeah.
old. I feel like that's
Yeah.
like Queen
So
of
that
England
we're starting
type
off
stuff.
easy. We're starting off easy.
Join me
okay?
to
All right,
spill
dude.
the tea.
A little bit harder.
Okay.
Sigma. AJ, you are Sigma.
Cool. I'm cool.
Sigma? Hold on. Hold on.
No.
You are Sigma?
Yeah.
If someone said that to me, I would assume they like it's some sort of AI thing. Like
Sigma.
you are Sigma. Like you're in this. What are they? Simulation type stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Tell you that.
You don't like
I
it?
don't like it.
It basically means like alpha, like the best main character energy. Like you
So why
are
not go
top.
alpha? Because that's also
Yeah,
in the Greek
Sigma.
alphabet.
Yeah.
They're just
They're
like,
just-
what,
yeah,
what can
they're
we
just-
swap it out with?
Yeah.
Alpha's no longer cool. What can we swap it out with?
Sigma.
Sigma.
But we want it to mean the same exact thing.
They're like, Omega's taken. Let's go with Sigma.
Yeah.
And it's logical
I think
if
alpha
it's
was
the
the
first
first
in the alphabet,
but Sigma
but no.
is All right.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay.
I'm not going to use that one.
All right. Unk status.
Unk status?
Yeah.
Like you're the cool uncle?
Ryan, does this resonate with you?
Yeah, cool uncle.
Yeah. You're
You
like
have
a cool
unk
uncle,
status?
dude. You're like
It is like uncle, I guess you could say, but it's not cool. So this is what Gen Z would say or Gen Alpha if like you said an old term. If you were like cool beans, they'd be like
I see.
unk status.
it's the new
So
boomer. It's like calling someone a boomer.
We had the
Yeah.
idea right, but the part
cool-
behind it was not.
It's like, oh, you're unk status.
So
dude. It's like,
basically, any
you just
of them
showed
watching
up.
right now would be like, this
These-
episode is unk
Yeah, you're doing it right
status.
now.
We're doing it right now.
This can be our unk status episode.
Yeah, unk status. Woo.
Okay.
Title.
All right, I have 2 more.
Yep.
Okay, fade.
Yeah,
It's not a haircut.
Shorter down here.
Yeah. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, Ryan, you have a nice fade.
Oh,
Thank
you
you.
give a sentence.
Yeah, someone. So okay, if someone steals something from you, you'll say like you're gonna catch this fade.
Like
Is that like
revenge?
catch these hands?
Yeah, like fight. Like basically means fight. I don't know why they can't say
Seems
fight.
like a complicated way to try to
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah, I'm not going to
Yeah.
use that one
I
either.
feel like they do they sit, is there a meeting? Like, do they sit down there like, these are the
who
terms
that is such
from the
a
group
good
before
question.
us?
How does
This
this
is
stuff
how we're going to
happen?
It
adjust
is a
them.
really interesting question. Like,
I
did
don't-
somebody just say that one day and their friends were like, that?
I feel like everyone
Yeah.
used to,
saying
like,
that.
old school pre-social media, it was like California, people start saying stuff there, and then it spreads
Yeah.
back this
Yeah.
way.
Right.
Or it's Europe this way.
Yeah.
Or, you
Now
know,
it's
we
just
say like,
TikTok
I'll be like,
people.
say more about that. And now they're like, say less.
Yes.
And
I'll
it's
say
like,
less.
at what
Say
point in
no
time
more.
do we
Sorry,
shift
did I use
the
too many
narrative?
words?
I'm like, I
You want me to-
don't know what I'm supposed to
I
do.
would say
We're
like,
now not interested in conversations.
I'm going
Do
to
you
explain it to you.
want me to
if
say
I
anything or
less.
no? Like,
Say
I'm
no
just,
more. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, last one,
Okay.
which I don't understand this one. Ohio.
I lived there.
You live there.
I was a great resident.
I was born there.
You were born
It's
in
a
the-
state.
Yes. Okay.
Is that a
in
state
a
of mind?
sentence.
Uh-huh.
So they kind of have like their eyebrows and they're like, "Are you from Ohio?"
Ryan,
Oh,
are
this
you-
is. I don't want to guess because we have
I
a
am.
huge
I was-
contingent of listeners from Ohio, and I don't want to offend them.
Yes.
The Buckeye
Just-
Nation.
It just means
Hmm.
like weird. Like if you do something weird and somebody says like,
So Ohio's
"Are
just
you
getting
from
thrown
Ohio?"
under the
I
bus
just went with
by
Ohio.
an
Yep.
entire generation.
That's
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, it
You're
kind of
from
was
Ohio?
in our generation. Bowling for Soup came out for that song, "Come Back to Texas,"
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that girl that went to Ohio.
That's
so again, they're
right.
just redoing
Yeah.
everything.
Poor Ohio.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Bowling
Nothing.
for Soup. Great.
That was a
band
great
of-
call
On
back there.
status right there.
1985.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
Oh, they did the Phineas and Ferb theme song.
Oh,
Wow.
104
You think they
days
still
of
get
summer
royalties on that?
vacation.
probably.
And school comes
Good for them.
along just to end it. So the annual problem.
I saw them at Warped Tour once years ago, and it was exactly how you
Thought it was
Phineas and
me.
Ferb was at Warped Tour.
no, Bowling for Soup.
I know. Phineas and Ferb is is it a Christian kids cartoon?
No,
I don't think it's Christian at all.
Okay, well here's why I asked that. We were talking about this morning. This is full circle.
Full
moment.
circle.
Wow.
2011.
Yeah.
Doug gets asked to lead worship, which in itself
Oh, yeah.
is
Phenomenal.
tremendous, at Super Kids Sports Camp at a church in Colorado.
And the backstory to that is, like, anytime we were traveling together or whatever, everyone just assumed, well, one of you knows how to lead worship, right? And it's certainly not going to be us two. So we were always
So
like,
it's
okay, Doug.
Doug was the best option.
Yeah.
That's like being a pitcher on the Rockies. It's like someone has to technically be the best, but nobody's good.
That's like going to McDonald's and being like, one of these things is healthy, right?
Yeah. Yes. Give me your healthiest item. Okay. And so it gets better though because
thank you.
Doug had to build a band for it. So he
Oh.
had me as the electric guitar
So
player.
now, if we were here, we're now going down a
which
few
was
levels.
a cool idea in one regard because we get paid for this whole week. The problem was I didn't play the electric.
Dude, I got home one night to our college home, and Doug was just teaching Ethan
Yeah.
like basic,
Yep.
like here's how you strum,
Teaching me main chords.
He's like, this is bear
and
claw.
I'm learning here's the song list, here's the little solo things you got to do. So we did it, and the lady who ran the whole thing asked Doug at one point if I was a prodigy. I'm going to say that, and I wasn't.
Sure.
And anyway, at this Super Kids Sports Camp where I was just shredding like Eddie Van Halen, during lunchtime the kids would watch Phineas and Ferb. So I've assumed until this moment it was a Christian show. I never watched it myself. I was older than. Oh my gosh, Haley. Should let my son watch that show. I can't believe it now that I know it's. No, I'm just kidding.
A
So it's
lot-
not
a
a
lot
Christian
has
show.
changed in
Well, they
30
watched it
seconds.
for lunch at Super Kids Sports Camp.
That used to be my like this is about to like show how like weak I am. But whenever whenever I can't watch like anything scary, so that would be like my like before
Do
I
it for
go
the
to
plot,
bed,
Kayla.
I
Come
would
on.
watch that and it would give me like good dreams.
It was your palate cleanser before
yeah,
bed.
yeah, that was my palate cleanser
That's
show.
the palate cleanser. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
I
So-
get that, but not maybe Phineas and Ferb. But anyway, Bowling for Soup, Phineas Ferb. At that,
Ohio.
we met at that Super Kids Sports Camp. We met Tim Tebow. He was practicing during a lockout on
Oh.
a football field nearby. So
Yeah. So you guys are
it
pretty close.
was worth. I did it for the plot. The whole thing. It was worth it. Well, Kayla, you've made us all officially UNC status. Is that
Yeah.
right? Cool.
UNC status.
Whatever. Don't care. AJ, let's have some conversation.
Let's
here.
go.
But
So you're in the world of politics. Describe kind of what that means for you, like your interaction with all that, what you're doing within that world before
Sure.
we ask some bigger picture
I
questions.
never anticipated being in the world of politics, right? I spent my career with Mr. Jamie Dimon himself.
Yeah, once you found out everyone at Chase was a little...
Yep.
It wasn't
Rude.
them. It was the people we were trying to work with while I was at Chase.
Oh.
So, yeah, Chase is
Okay.
good. Chase is good.
Okay.
I'll be ride or die for Chase forever.
Chase
but-
is back in my good graces.
I will
Yes.
continue
And
to...
they were worried.
to bank.
they
Please.
were worried.
Did we
about
pull
us.
our money out of Chase Bank? Thanks, guys, for
Oh.
going
Nice.
under.
Nice.
Good luck on the next recession that Ryan and I caused. It's the last domino. Okay.
Yeah, so Chase was like my first like big girl job. Like
Hmm.
worked there all of 18 years old, and I worked there for 13 years.
Wow.
And so just had a passion for operations, had a passion for all things finance because that's what I grew up doing. And then a very short time ago, like a year and a half ago, I fell into a situation with an organization that is heavy in the political world. Like I said, their clients are governors. And I was like, are y'all sure you want to hire me? Because I don't do anything remotely close to that. And I was brought in to be the head of business operations, so help them scale for profitability and do nothing within the political sector. However, when you're in an organization with less than 35 people, you get to hear things and see things. And I work hand in hand with the president and the CEO. And so I very, very quickly was baptized by fire, I guess is a great term to use here.
We use water here, but yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Into that.
You know that because you got baptized here.
I did get baptized here. Yeah, so I was able to see very quickly. Now, I will say that in the Texas landscape, I have a lot of friends that are heavily involved in politics. So I knew enough to be dangerous. My whole life, we've heard things about either party. And so there wasn't a lack of education on my part, but there was definitely, it's different when you're in it and you're working in it. So I think
Yeah.
it was very quickly hearing both the human level of like, oh, this is how somebody thinks and operates, and what is said at the top and what actually happens at the bottom is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when a law is passed or something's put out into the world, it's done with, at most times, the best intention, but how it actually materializes and comes to fruition when it's put into work is very, very different. And the team that I work with, they're so incredibly talented at the implementation of those things and making it happen, and making sure that the idea and the actual thing that comes to pass align. And it's not just somebody being like, hey, we should go do this. And then it's not what happens in the classroom or what happens in the real world is different. So that's kind of how I got into politics. I say politics loosely because it's, like I said, on very, very different levels and we see different things. But, and again, I'm very much times like the one who like helps run and organize and operate those things, not the one that's out there actually making like the speeches by any means. But it's been a very, very enlightening year and a half to be part of that world.
You work with people on both sides. What is someone who's kind of wading through a lot of the polarization and two sides fighting against each other, and you're trying to just make change and help with things like education reform and stuff like that? What are some of the things you're learning about middle ground? Because I think obviously we live in such a polarized time, but we're in a moment right now where I think a lot of people are like, man, there's a bigger picture to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can get so tunnel visioned into this team against this team and all this kind of stuff. Then you have something like an assassination attempt that brings both camps to stop. Like you saw that this weekend, this past weekend. Biden's camp, Trump, everyone just stops and it's like, okay, let's take a few days off of attack and politics and all this stuff and remember that there's human beings. This is a wild time we live in, and everyone is so volatile. Feels like we're in one like deep breath right now, maybe. What are some things that you're seeing in the middle of that gives like possibility of maybe staying a little closer to that kind of mentality?
I think what has been so enlightening in this process and of me jumping into this world has been the initial shock was everybody is so strongly in one camp or the other. So to come in, there's the red side, there's the blue side, there's Democrats, there's Republicans, and they're just so firmly in there. Most of the time, in my experience recently, they don't know why they're on one side or the other, but they're very, very passionately one side or the other.
Yeah.
And so you ask questions like, well, hey, how do you feel about this? Well, I don't know, but I just want to let you know that I'm on this side. And you're like, okay, is there room for us to talk a little bit about the other side and how we can kind of rebalance and bring that in the middle? Oh, no, absolutely not. This is where I stand. And so majority of the conversations that we have are with people that are just like, no, we can't do that. That's what the other side does. And it's like, but what if we work together to make that more of a unifying thing? Like, what if we just make sure kids can read? What if we just make sure, well, no, that's the other side's problem. And so that was really a shock to me, because I think I'm a logical and emotional person, but I really think like, what's just the right thing? And I want to operate from a place of EQ, and that's in the world of politics, not a normal place to operate from. It's like, no, what do we do? As this party, we orient in this way. I think with what happened this weekend, we saw a lot of humanity brought to the table. We heard that Biden called Trump and said, are you okay? Like, I want to check in on you. I don't think a few weeks ago when the debate happened, that would have taken place.
They wouldn't shake hands.
They wouldn't shake hands. You looked at two men who would not shake each other's hand before a conversation that they were having in front of the entire world, basically. And then this weekend, I think there was a level of rebalance and humanity that just came after a terrible situation where they were able to look at each other and go, hey, at the end of the day, this is about leading the free world.
Right.
We're both humans trying to do that.
Yeah.
And it gave them a little bit of unity. And I think if there's one small sliver of golden, what is that called? Silver lining. Wow, I went straight for gold. I really like gold.
Gold lining.
That just shows how we as humans are like, there can't be a gold lining. Yeah. Maybe a silver.
Middle, you're like silver lining. Yeah, I think there was like a small sliver of silver lining, the fact that they were able to come together as humans, have that conversation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Albeit short.
There's one of my favorite thinkers, G.K. Chesterton, theologian. He said something along the lines of, I'm going to get it wrong, the reason we quarrel so much is because we've lost the art of arguing. And then he said it's amazing how bad we are at arguing. And my read on that is because we've lost the art of having conversations and going back and forth and seeing different sides, it's now just turned to, so we're just going to fight. And we're just going to quarrel. And I think to your point, what we saw is like, hey, what if we bring it back down a little bit and get back to realizing that every issue is complicated and it's our job to look at both sides and have conversations about it.
Yeah, the temperature gets just so high. And of course, there's going to be conspiracies and layers to how did we get here and all those kinds of things. But I think when you just look at the moment itself without everybody else giving opinions and stuff, a man lost his life.
Right.
Corey Campertore, I don't know exactly how to say his last name, but like that just stops everyone in their tracks. Like, how have we gotten to a point where a presidential candidate's getting shot at, a man has to dive in front of his family and get shot and killed at a political event? It's not the first time something like this has happened. Right. It's all through history. There's always going to be people who go off the rails and, do horrible, horrible things. But the humanity element brought back. Someone lost their life. A man was shot, out there trying to kill somebody. It's just ridiculous. I'm not asking you to answer this like for the history of America, but you've been in politics for a while. How do you see, how have we gotten so polarized? How has it gotten so hateful? And like you said, there's no real debate. It's just a fight. It's just, forget you. There's no logical, maybe there is a little bit of ground there that they're right on. How have we gotten here?
I think, so one of the moments of panic that I had when I first jumped into this world was like, oh my gosh, how do we ever come back from something like this? Like, there's never been a moment in time that's as polarizing as we are currently. And I was talking to a mentor that I have in the political realm, and I was just like, how do you do this? Like, I'm trying to navigate this, and I'm not only trying to navigate it just in general from a place of survival for my daily work, but also as a Christian, how do I navigate this, and have these hard conversations? And this feels like just the apex of the most politically charged point of all time. And he pulled me back for a second, and he said, hold on, let's talk about these moments in history. This isn't the first time that we've had two people fighting for the presidential office. This isn't the first time that there's been really, really, like, think back when there was World War II. Think about when there were these other things that have happened in history that are so big, how people were feeling in that moment. They were probably feeling like, we'll never come back from World War II. We will never come back from, those huge moments in history where things have happened that were so polarizing even then. Like, if you think as soon as World War II was over, like, not everything was just like, okay, well, that's done. Let's just go back to, like, there was like a huge, section of time where people had to rebuild, and misplaced groups had to go back into areas and try to be, free entry into that area. So it's like, I had to sit and think of that and be like, okay, this is another point in time where we're polarized. Yeah. So this isn't, how did we get so polarized? This is another point in our history where we are being polarized, or things are polarized, and so are our thoughts and our beliefs. And it's, how do we navigate that from here? Yeah. I would love to say our leaders could help us do that, but that may not always be the case, because sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees, and they get so into the things that they're doing, and they really think that they're fighting for the right thing, but and not saying that they aren't. But when you're so passionate about something, so I don't, to answer your original question, I don't think it's truly being in a place of like, how did we get here? Because I feel like we've been here many times. It's just different layers and different details and different circumstances. I think what opportunity we have now, and I hope comes out of this, is for us to take that pause and realize this is a humanitarian thing. This is I just said humanitarian. Human thing.
Same root word.
Same root, yeah. This is a very, very human thing. This is a place for us to really, really take pause and be like, what is it that we're fighting for? Is it a red versus blue thing? Yeah. Or is it the future of our nation thing?
Yeah. Because you see that while there's all kinds of fighting about all kinds of power and things like that, there's kids in this country that need to get educated. Right?
100%.
There's things that the government is supposed to do and fight for the better of the people here. Are there moments that you feel hope in the political system? Because I think for a lot of people maybe that aren't directly tied to it, that just observe or avoid the news in a lot of ways, it's just like, forget this. Like, we can become so cynical. There's no point in voting. There's no point in thinking about all this, because it's just so bad. It's gotten so ridiculous that I'm just going to pretend like that's not there. But that's not the right approach.
Right.
But there's a reason people get there. So what are some things that give you hope? Not that we're going to ever become a perfect country, but that there can be some people who are fighting for good.
Right. I think right now we're looking at it on a national level, right? We're looking at the presidential election, but so many good things are happening on the state level. So many good things are happening just in our communities, at the city level, at the district level. So while it's easily an option to be overwhelmed at, thinking that you have like a not great candidate and even worse candidate, or vice versa, or, two people that, you wouldn't have chosen. Yeah. I think trusting that the man that's going to end up in office is the one that's going to help, lead and continue every great thing this nation has done so far. And then our state leaders are going to carry out what's being done on a state level, which are really, really great things. Like, I can name 17 states right now that are doing such incredible things for their kids, and making sure that, all children have access to education, that they're starting in pre-K, so that they're not behind when they get to kindergarten, that there's universal pre-K available for them in many, many states. And so I think there is hope. I think if we really, really zone in on only what's happening currently with the election, which I think happens every 4 years. This is not new, right? This happened 4 years ago, 4 years prior to that. Every election season, I think it always feels really polarizing. I think it's probably humorous for us to look back and think like, oh man, yeah, when Romney and Obama that was really rough, and now we're like, that was nothing by comparison. But I think ultimately there's a lot of hope. There's really, really great things that are happening, and I think not only just in the education sector, but across the board in other areas of politics. But it's so easy to focus on the one negative, and the one negative being, hey, I don't like this candidate, or I don't like that political party. And what we should be focusing on is much bigger than that.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, I think there are people who put all their hope into politics rather than just pretending it's not there. And it comes up a lot, the Stockdale paradox idea of like, we're going to hope for the best and continue to fight for that while accepting our reality. And I think that the reality is any nation is going to have brokenness, and any people who get too much power, too much money, it's very hard to be in that world and not become corrupt in some way and not get pulled into things that a lot of them probably look back on and go, how did I get here? From a Christian standpoint, that's what concerns me a lot of the time. Like when our country's fighting and people who just have put their faith in politics, or that's their religion, so to speak, you're kind of like, yeah, I guess you are going to be that riled up. You are going to take this that seriously. But when I see Christian people who are citizens first of the kingdom of heaven, who have a King of Kings on the throne that we have our faith in, we can still get really wrapped into politics. How has that been interesting to you to watch as a person of faith interacting with politics, and how Christian people within that
I think that's probably been my greatest challenge. And that was what I was not prepared for. Like, I think going into this industry, I knew a lot of things on surface, and I had a lot of conversations. I'm super type A. I don't know if you guys know that. But I tried to be AJ.
Very Sigma.
Very Sigma. Good.
For
Thanks,
Alpha.
Kayla.
Yes.
Alpha Joy.
Alpha Joy. That's actually what's on my birth certificate. So I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of people. I was like, what does this look like? What is this landscape? Because for most of my life, I tried to stay away from it. And so going into this, I was really eyes wide open to a lot of things. Was not prepared with how the Christian faith is represented in politics. And I was not prepared for, which sounds silly because like looking back, I'm like, well, of course, like anyone knows that. But I just, I knew what my church believed. I knew what my pastor said. I knew what the people I surrounded myself with talked about. And then to get into a realm where people made decisions based on it not being the right thing, or the thing that was like really, really great for the individual on the outcome. It was because that's what, the Christian party aligns with, or what doesn't align with. I think that was like, it was very, very enlightening to me. And it's funny because if you talk about an issue on surface and you don't assign names to it or political parties to it, and you just have a conversation about the issue with an everyday person, they may have a lot to say about it. They may say like, oh, well, I believe this because of this, or in my experience, I've seen this, that, and the other. But then the second you tie a party to it, like, oh, did you know that the Democratic Party believes in A? Or did you know that the Republican Party believes in B? Suddenly that conversation becomes so charged and polarized. Yeah. And I think that's something, well, did you know that they believe this? And I'm like, well, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something over here. Right. And I think how naive of me to walk into this and think that we were just really going to talk about the chips and not necessarily everything that was around it.
Yeah.
So, and that's just something that I've learned. And I was actually on the phone with a friend last night, and I was like, hey, so what do you think about this? And he is an incredible person in politics, and he aligns very strongly with one party. And he was like, well, we as a party believe this because of why. And I was like, that's so great about the party. What do you believe about that?
Good.
How does that impact? Because biblically, when it comes to that topic, I've read this biblically. So what do you think that says if the party says this, but biblically, and you kind of stay in the zone, he comes to church here. So I was like, let's talk about that, just you and I. Like, what does that look like?
Good.
And there's definitely a apprehension, because when you so strongly align to a political party, you want to be like, well, no, this is what this says. We should go here.
Yeah.
And to fight that, hey, hold on. Party is the party. This belief is this. This is what the Bible says. This is what me as a Christian, how I'm receiving. Like, how do you navigate that? Yeah. And those conversations have been really interesting.
How many people do you think truly critically? I'm talking just average U.S. citizen. Like, think critically about what they align with and know what they're talking about with the issues that are prominent for each party. How many people do you think really have critical, like, could give you a good answer for why they align there, other than one big thing, or because their family is that, or their friend group or whatever?
I think it's, if we're talking about like a group of 10, maybe 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Prior to me working in this field, I was just like, oh, who are we voting for? Like, I like this guy, or my family says we're this. I should vote that way.
Right.
One of the biggest challenges, speaking of type A, that I've taken upon myself is like, you see people online posting like, did you hear about this? If this person stays in the office, or if this person takes office, they're going to do this. And I've spent hours reading the actual plans that people publish, because I'm like, I need to know. 1, because I'm so new to this. 2, is it true? Like, unfortunately, right, wrong, or indifferent, the press is saying a lot of things. And so like, what is the truth? So I'm like, if I'm spending this time going in and reading 1,000 pages line by line about a potential transition plan. I know I had no interest doing this a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Is anyone else doing that? And I'm calling people going, did you read paragraph 14? What does that mean? I've never seen that word before.
Yeah.
And what does this mean? But people aren't doing that. Instead, it's so easy to go on Facebook and just repost something that's sensationalized and being like, can you believe this? This person hates this.
Yeah, and social media allows for a half-truth everywhere.
Every
that
time.
It's all spin. It's all, but it also feeds people the idea that they know what they're talking about. That they are being educated, but they're not actually doing the real homework.
And it almost gives them excuses to hate something.
Yeah, that's.
And so
well said.
instead of going out and just finding it, it's, oh, somebody posted that on Instagram, I'm going to repost that. And that gives me an excuse to hate it.
Yeah. You have a question?
I think this is really important. I love what you just said, because I think what you are doing is giving people permission to admit when they don't understand something and permission to be a novice at something. And I think that's one of our greatest fears as we continue to grow up. It's like, well, I'm X amount of years old. I should know this by now. And it's like, if we could all just go, no, there's a lot to learn, and you can start from the beginning, and you can ask questions, and you can admit when you don't know what a word means. I think that is a great starting point.
100%.
Because the fear of feeling like we don't know, I think, is what drives us to those like big talking points where we go, but can you believe that they did that? Right? And I love what you just said as somebody, you're in this world and you're like, no, I started from the beginning. Yeah. And I've just done research and I've worked. I think that mentality of humility will go a long way in the future of politics in our country.
There is in human nature a desire to just blame something or have an enemy in some regard. And so politics becomes that in our country very easily, where you can point to somebody else and go, all this is your fault, or vice versa. There's also in human nature, we talk about this a lot, the we want a king syndrome that's in humanity that you see all the way back in the Old Testament, where God is Israel's king, and then they go, nope, we want a man. We want a human being that we can look at and put our faith in him. Yeah. And it doesn't go too well for most of the Old Testament. Outside of a couple kings, for the most part, it's a mess over and over. And God has to keep restoring and calling them back to him and calling them back to worship him and get back to his word and get back to what he commands. And so I feel like that ultimately is always the answer in the end. And the church should be like at the forefront of that, of not playing the blame game and not pointing fingers at people, but going, hey, there's actually someone we have our faith in already. We have the leader, the king that we need to be going back to and repenting and getting to his word and letting him guide us and lead us. But it's very hard to do that because everybody gets quickly pulled into their political world. And I can tell, like, this past Sunday, we were all three talking before church, and we're like, hey, we have to address what everyone's thinking about. There's an assassination attempt yesterday. I like thinking of just how to talk about that and say whatever I would say, whether it was Trump or Biden. Right. I want to say the same thing I would say of the heart of the church and what we're supposed to have, the hope of Christ and all that. But am thinking through my words even more carefully than I do sermons talking about eternity, calling people out in sin, like hardcore spiritual stuff. But know that politics is the thing that you get on stage and anything comes up, everyone's ears perk up, like, you better not say one wrong thing.
Isn't that wild?
Like, I always make this joke to my wife when we're at my son's friends' birthday parties. Like, imagine if we're all just standing around with the parents and I just like, hey, so who's everybody voting for? I was at a birthday party recently and I started talking to this guy and he's like, what do you do? I'm a pastor. What church? Oh, Christian church, Red Rocks. He's like, oh, I'm a Buddhist. And we have this conversation asking about each other's religions, our faith, right? Awesome. Yeah. And it wasn't, but if the same thing, if I'd been like, so are you a Democrat or Republican? That whole party would have blown up. And that to me shows the idolatry of politics, the idolatry of men, of people that we put our faith in or put all our blame and hate towards when we have a real enemy who's just loving. Like, we make his job so easy for him in this country. He's like, oh, you guys will just blow this thing up yourselves. Yeah. The system's built. You guys just go.
And to acknowledge that neither party encapsulates the way of Jesus fully.
Right.
Yes, and just you saying that is going to make some people really, really mad.
What?
Yeah.
Like, no, neither side.
I remember
not fully.
In a sermon, Matt Chandler, who always has a way of saying things very intensely. That's why I love him. It was a Revelation series, and in Revelation there's a point at which the dragon, who's the enemy, represents the enemy, raises up these beasts, and it's false religion and it's politics, these idols that they have. And in his sermon in Texas, where it could be hot topics.
Yeah.
He goes, for all of you in here that are Republicans, you are right to a point, and then you serve the dragon. And to all of you that are Democrats, you are right to a point, and then you serve the dragon.
Right.
And it was silence in the room.
Yeah.
But if we could recognize that, I feel like it would bring us all back to earth to go, okay, let's have conversations about the issues and make progress and make education better and things like that, because we know that neither party's complete. Neither party's going to get it completely right. We don't have to get so like my team, your team. Let's just work for solutions and remember that Jesus is on the throne, and ultimately it's that kingdom that we're working towards. So let's just make this as good as we can while we're here. But America's not the Bible, and we're not going to end up here. There's a bigger picture for us to hold on to.
And I've had people approach me when because I'm very, I don't want to say loud, but like AJ, what do you like to do for fun? What do you do on the weekends? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I go to this really cool place, Red Rocks Church. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, well, do you think Jesus was Republican? And I'm like, I don't think that's like.
They didn't have that then.
Wasn't even the framework.
I'm not sure that's how this works, but I wish I had $1 for every time that I've been asked that, because I would have at least $10. Like people ask me, I could buy lunch. But people ask all the time. They're like, but Jesus, like he would have been a Democrat, right? Like he would have been. And like people ask me all the time, like, oh, you're a person of faith? Cool. What was Jesus and how should I be voting? And I'm like,
wow. When Ron Swanson said that history began on July 4th, 1776, and everything before that was a mistake, it's funny. It's not true. So just so we all know, there was actually the majority of history was pre-America. That cultural snobbery that C.S. Lewis? Chronological snobbery. Yep. Americans are king of that. Oh, yeah. Because we kind of think what Ron Swanson is actually true. Yeah. And there's a lot of great things about this country, no doubt about it. Like, I've traveled, I've spent years in a role as a missions pastor and stuff, been to a lot of different countries and seen a lot of different cultures and struggles of people. And every time I came back here, I'd go, man, this place has its stuff. But I am very thankful that I was born here, because there's so much good about this country. But we need to have some humility
100%.
To realize that Jesus was not an American.
Right.
Nobody knew about America. This hadn't been discovered back then, just in case people don't know.
Add more to that, we would also, when we were younger in all of this, very much, when you're a missionary, the line that comes up is like, well, the American church, so passive, American church not doing anything. Yeah. But then you travel enough and you realize, like, actually, there's a little bit of truth to that. Yeah. And there's a lot of truth to the fact that the American church, the church in America, is doing an awful lot.
Yes.
Like, there is a lot of really good things happening.
That was a good distinction to make. The American church versus the church in America. Because we are not, first and foremost, an American church. Right. We're a Jesus church that happens to be in the country of America. But that also lumps all church in America together to make it seem like everybody's on the same page and all those churches are corrupt in the same way and they all do this. No. We're citizens of the kingdom of heaven. There's something bigger going on.
Right.
Okay, so we talked about fragile faith this past weekend. Yeah. And I think that ties really well to politics. Ryan.
How? Tell us more. What do you mean?
In a very loving way, Ryan mainly deconstructed New Age faith and was tremendous. So good in explaining a lot of the deceptions and hollow philosophy and things that are in New Age spirituality and how that's causing a lot of fragility in people's faith. So go listen to that if you didn't hear that message, because it's also very helpful to navigate the cultural time we live in spiritually. But let's shift that concept to politics, because you see a lot of fragile faith, like we're talking about, of people that, 100%. Well, if Jesus wasn't a Republican or a Democrat, then well, that's not okay with me. Like we tie those things so loosely or so tightly together. Let's talk about fragile faith in politics. How can people continue to build mature faith while having an opinion politically?
I think, well, one thing I hear most often is if Trump doesn't win the election, then America's lost all its faith. Or if Biden doesn't, whatever side, and they tie that to faith. So they tie the outcome to, something like, well, God's lost in America if this doesn't happen. And God's not going anywhere. None of that is changing based on the man. Right. Like he's there, he's good. that based on the man that's been put in office. And I think that in hearing your message and then going into the weekend with the attempted assassination, it was like, we truly can see how fragile some of our values are and our faith is when it's tied so strongly and tightly to an outcome or something of that sort. I think when people tie anything of, oh, if this doesn't happen, or if that means God's not here, or look what's happening in this part of the world, that's God must not be real. And so it's so quickly we are to dismiss his truth or being or presence based on an outcome versus on a whole. And I see that every single day. And I think your message was so timely. And regardless of what is happening, like how is your faith? Like, your faith doesn't have to be fragile. Just regardless of the outcome, that doesn't dictate whether he is here, if he's present, he's with those families, with those things. But it's so quickly, that's the first thing that somebody wants to tie is whatever an outcome is, if faith is real.
Wow.
It makes me think of Daniel in the Old Testament. You want to talk about a strange political situation to live in, where they had Nebuchadnezzar, who's like a tyrant, crazy guy, and decides everything for everyone. And Daniel gets brought over as a captive into this political world and ends up becoming an advisor politically, like crazy life story, but never compromised his faith.
Right.
Never got rattled, by so much to walk away from who he knew God to be, and was able to walk into that and make a huge impact. Yeah. Some of the biggest fragility of faith I see is when tied to politics is either people who go, that person won, I'm going in my bunker for the next 4 years, right? Or if that person wins, I'm leaving this country.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, I'm only talking about Christians. If politics, like if you don't have faith, then politics may be the highest level of power you see in the world, and okay, that's probably gonna have a huge effect on you. Yeah. But if you're a Christian person, and at any point because of world like politics, you're gonna go in a bunker and stop living out the Great Commission, then your faith is fragile.
Very fragile.
Or if you're gonna leave the place that you think is gonna get worse instead of staying there to bring the light of Jesus in that place, then your faith is fragile.
That's the whole point. The whole point. So the verse that I really honed in on, Colossians 2, verse 9, I'm going to read it again. For in Christ, all of the fullness, and that was the key word, of the deity lives in bodily form. And in Christ, you have been brought to fullness. And so the idea of not having fragile faith is realizing that all of the games that we play as humans to try to find that fullness are actually just games. And so I went after New Age spirituality of like, okay, God's fullness is up here and we need to do all of these things to ascend, to reach that fullness. I think the same thing can be true of politics, where of course politics is important, absolutely. Yeah. But what starts to happen is we start to go, oh, but if we can just get here and get this person elected, then we'll experience this fullness. And what Paul is writing to say is all of the fullness you're looking for is found in Christ. Yeah. That is the answer. Yeah. That is the Greek word is the pleroma of God is found in Christ. And because we are in Christ, we actually have that fullness, which means you can walk into a very heated, I would imagine, arena with people on both sides yelling at you. And you can realize like, I know that they have part of the truth and I know they have part of the truth, but actually the fullness is Jesus and Christ in me. And so now I am freed up to, without having fragile faith, participate in conversations and discussions and debate and all of that without it turning into this like, I'm out of here, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the same thing that a lot of different heresies and cults and all of that over history have tried to do. We're kind of doing the same thing with politics.
You have to be kind of a diplomat working with different parties, and I'm sure you have your own political beliefs that sometimes you're working with people that you're like, I don't resonate with you on some things.
Yeah.
So how does your faith guide you as someone who's in that world?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think a conversation that I had with someone a long time ago, even when I was working in finance, was at the end of the day, like, how would you care for the person sitting across the table from you? Oof. So is it more important for me to be right and for me to walk away and have like the right title and the right affiliation? Or is it that we're able to have a conversation and they feel like heard, seen, retained, valued, cared for? So I think it's hard to walk into rooms, especially if you're talking to a party where they or just an individual that's like, I don't do the Christian thing, like please don't bring that in here with me, that's fine. But I think over time, like I had a client I was working with for a while, and he was like, I didn't want to hear the whole like Christian thing. And he was like, but one thing is you've never said anything to me about faith. You've never talked to me about Jesus, but the care of which you've handled all of our conversations, I can tell that it's something that you carry with you. And I remember hearing that saying at the time, and I was like, oh, it's just because like I'm really nice. But through our conversations, or me just being a good human and just being like, hey, like, can you tell me more where you found that value? Or can you tell me more about that? Because I do want to know. Because sometimes, you know, our own personal bias will lead us to accept something that's so far from whether it be truth or reality, just because that's based on experience. You see so many people, especially when it comes to faith, turn away based on their own personal experience and just be like, well, God hates me because, and then they can become hardened. But what if somebody has a conversation with them and be like, hey, so like, what happened that made you think that? And like, let's unpack that together. So I think my faith has guided me in a way where if I can just walk into a room and know that I'm talking to a person, not a party, a person, not an office, or a person that has a problem, not a policy, then that allows us to find the root of what we need to work on together as human beings, not as political party participants.
Yep.
That's good.
That sounds so important. I mean, that's what Jesus was doing. There are all these different groups with a lot of, like the Pharisees and the Herodians, they very much disagreed politically about a lot of things. And they would ask Jesus questions like, should we pay this tax?
Right.
You know, like, do you pay the temple tax and everything else? And it's like they were constantly trying to go, Jesus, which side are you on?
Yeah.
And all he ever did was sit down with the individual right in front of him. Yeah. And you do that really well. And that's such an important skill and gift. And so thank you for doing that and displaying that.
Yeah.
You know.
That's a good, I mean, I think a lot of it's easy for us as humans to blame the people in power for everything, but we're all complicit in how polarized things are in some way. Yeah. Because it's the family member you won't talk to because they're on the other political side. That's like, you're part of the problem then. You know, like I just think about eternity when we're all hanging out at a big wedding reception and it's like, oh, sorry, we never hung out in our lifetime because we voted differently. How small that's going to seem. Yeah. I don't mean to minimize that it's important to have opinions and vote and all that stuff. No, but man, is so much of it going to seem so dumb to us when we see the grand picture of who God is. Right. And we're in there. And practically, when you look at Daniel's life, thinking of Babylon and how he rose to a place of influence to the point that Nebuchadnezzar like acknowledged God and got humbled, which is what everyone wants for political leaders.
100%.
What Daniel did every day was pray. Like prayer was the lifeblood, and he was uncompromising in his faith, and that led him to keep praying even when he got thrown in a lion's den and got in trouble for all that stuff through his lifetime. But that uncompromising faith and prayer and letting God just do his thing, like he ended up getting asked and interpreted a dream, and Nebuchadnezzar was like, oh, you're different than these guys that I have around me. You know somebody. Let's talk about him. But I think it all started with prayer. And I think that is the biggest cliche Christian political thing ever said that nobody really does. Right. We need to pray for our leaders. I'm like, I don't believe you pray for the president that you didn't vote for. Right. I don't believe you. No, there are some truly great people out there that are like, I'm praying for the president no matter who it is. But for most Christians, I'm like, you're going to pray for your candidate. And then you're going to kind of like begrudgingly be like, and God, would you please find a way to remove that person?
Should I call fire to fall down from heaven?
Right. Exactly. Right. But if we actually like had a movement of prayer in the church in America, of praying for God to just speak and let people of Christian faith, people that walk with Jesus, have influence in rooms and conversations where he ultimately makes moves, that will change things.
100%.
It's all through the Bible. Turn back to God and pray and let him go to work.
Non-selective prayers. Pray for our leaders as a whole, not just the one leader that we really like that may also help us out with the other thing that could benefit us personally on that one specific day, but praying for all of our leaders.
It's like as soon as prayer is a means to an end, you've lost the heart of prayer.
Exactly.
That's good.
Very good.
That's good. Okay, well, I'm out of questions. Do you have anything else you want to ask?
I think the big one is unity is something that's such a part of our heart. Paul talks about in Colossians 3, so you'll go there this week. And politics is such an important piece of making a country run and making the world run. And so I feel like this is really a important space for unity with all of your work and everything that you get to see. Do you have anything that is on your heart to share around the word unity and how like tangibly we can work to get there? Like paint a picture of a preferable future for us politically. That I'm not saying that the teams have to go away. I think the teams are important, but unity of human beings within it.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great question. And I think if I had it figured out or had the mic drop of advice, I'd probably be in different rooms than I am currently. But that unity is so important. And what we just mentioned about praying for all leaders, not specific leaders. And I think the biggest encouragement in every conversation I have, like I said earlier, when I walked into this, I thought very certainly like, oh, I identify with this. And I've always identified with this one thing. Being surrounded by people who are identifying with something different and hearing their point of views has been so helpful for me. It's been so helpful in the job that I do. It's been so helpful in the impact that we've made with students. But I think when it comes to unity and is there hope? Absolutely. Is it going to feel like that between now and November? Probably not. But I think as groups, just keeping our focus around that prayer and knowing that the group and what is going to happen is already set into motion. Like there's not something I can say in this moment that's going to change the trajectory of every single thing going forward. It's not going to change a party's mind on either side. It's not going to change an outcome of some minor or major election. But I think at the end of the day, making sure that we don't stay fragile in those thought processes and that based on whatever outcome, whether it's what I want or what somebody else's wants, not changing my direction or my faith or the things that I do on a daily basis because I'm upset. I don't want to go into a bunker. I don't want to go do something different. I want to make sure that I stay on that path and know of doing the right thing one foot in front of the other, regardless of whatever happens in November.
Poof. That was it.
Maybe we can use AI and clone you, and you could become governors in all the states.
And all of them. Could you imagine? In Ginger Nation.
Do some research into that. See if ChatGPT has that capability.
That's so good.
Well,
AJ.
One thing that gives me hope is people like you that are in the world that are having an influence in politics, and I am grateful for that. So thank you for what you do, and plenty of things that you probably can't talk about on a podcast, but the rooms you sit in, the conversations you have, and I know there's more people like you that truly want to make things better for the time that we have here. So thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining Afterthoughts.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I think we've all achieved UNC status today, talking politics, talking about Facebook.
Status. Yeah.
Anything else, Kayla?
That's all I got. AJ's the best.
Really?
I don't know how she balances all the plates she's got.
Lots of plates.
Yeah.
Share this with your friends. Just can start a good conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a huge piece of this, of unity is, hey, let's just sit down and just talk about
it.
Our place in this. And hey, let's disagree, but learn to argue in a healthy way. Or just hear each other and why we think this and why we think that.
Can I give a homework assignment?
You absolutely can, Ryan.
In James, it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. So here's the homework assignment. Find one person who you don't see eye to eye with politically. Ask them if they will go have coffee with you, pay for their coffee, and then ask them about their political view, and do not say anything about yours for the entire hour, just as an exercise. Just see if you can keep asking questions. Okay, now what do you think about this? Okay, now what do you think about this? And practice not having the last word. Practice not having to be like, well, actually, it's like this. And just sit there and listen and hear another perspective. Slow to be angry.
Quick to listen, slow
to anger,
slow to speak.
Slow to speak.
Those three things describe almost no one in this country. So
try it out. See what happens.
Ryan, would love to ask you, you want to get coffee this week?
I would love to.
That would be do that, and you'll grow. And share this with some other people so they can learn from AJ. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, AJ.
Woo!